What's up, guys? You're listening to Nervous Rex, and I'm here with Tareq Azim. And what exactly would be your title? Are you you're more than just a trainer? I feel like you have a sort of a little cult following happening. What's the?
I just say a really hungry individual who understands how to utilize the efficacy of sport and physical activity to hone in on key mental and emotional deficiencies.
So you train a group. You were just telling me you train like a group of individuals from the NFL. You also train MMA fighters.
Yeah.
So what? So you're more than just a trainer. I feel like from what I read in the ESPN thing, it's almost like you sort of have a spiritual like leader vibe or something that people look to you. I remember Brian Callen was just sitting right here with me the other day and praising you, and he was just saying how, I don't know if you heard him on the podcast. He was just saying how he just fucking loves you. I mean, he's just like, yeah, he's the best.
He is.
And he was just saying how much of a solid guy you are and everything you're doing so special. And then so I mean, we had met 12 years ago, I guess you said, when you came to my show in Vegas.
With Mickey Avalon.
Yeah, with Mickey Avalon and Henner, right?
Yeah.
So now here we are 12 years later, or whatever the fuck that was. That was probably 12 years ago. And now you're, obviously, were you training with Henner at the time?
Yeah. So I did all my white belt on through there.
Oh, you were white belt then when I met you?
No, when I started. I started at the academy from white belt on. And then moved on. Been training forever. Obviously, got my black belt. So Henner.
With Henner?
Yeah. And then I got my black belt actually from Jake Shields.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That's what I heard.
Yeah. So I was living in LA up until my brown belt.
Well, he's a Bay Area guy, right?
Yeah.
He's out of San Francisco.
Back home, man. I went back home.
So we're both Bay guys. Did you grow up in the Bay Area?
I did. I came to America when I was 2.5, 3 years old. As a refugee.
Where are you from?
Afghanistan. Yeah. So the family's here from Afghanistan, and grew up in the Bay. Started right off of Silver Avenue, Silver and Sweeney in Portola, and then moved over to the East Bay. And then finished high school there.
Where in the East Bay?
Concord.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, ended up going to Ignacio Valley High School. And then
I think I played you guys in high school basketball, like the scrimmage games we used to play. I went to Alameda High School, so we'd play the Oakland teams.
Yeah.
And we'd go out that way for there'd be preseason games where we'd play different regions. I think we played you guys once.
Yeah, basketball and soccer, Alameda and YV will play.
Yeah.
And then football, we were in a different breed.
And did you play sports back then? Were you an athletic guy?
I did, man. Yeah, I played football, I played soccer, I did track. And I ended up playing football at Fresno State as a linebacker there.
Oh, no way.
Yeah. And then in parallel to all that, since I was very young, my mother got me into combat sports. Started off with Taekwondo, the obvious, and then got into boxing, kickboxing very young. Not to ever really be a competitor, it was primarily because of confidence, right?
Right.
And insecurities, and be able to leverage that. And those are the types of correlations I started adopting super young on how changing position and changing angle will prevent you from an emotional outburst, which usually leads to a knockout. So it just helped me become really measured. Right. And that's where I was utilizing, combat sports for better performance in football and tackling things that wasn't normal in the Afghan community. You feel me? So a lot of the Afghans were always like, oh shit, we're Afghan, we play soccer, and that's all we do.
Right.
It's like, no, man, I'm a disruptor. I want to do other things. But then I get hated on so much growing up because it was like, oh, he's so Americanized. He's so whitewashed because he's playing football and he's in track and he's in leadership. And I made a whole bunch of my youth about making FU performances.
Good. Yeah, gave you just an edge. It gave you really something to be pissed off about. Now you're saying that within the Afghan community they looked down on being Americanized because it was like
back then, right? Because we weren't even first generation. The majority of my generation was here at the age of 2 or 3 years old. Right. So, in the mindset of our homes is always like, hey, listen, just get what you can. We're going to go back to our country soon. So we never felt like America was home. Because we thought at any minute, because we all grew up on Section 8 and welfare and housing, so it was, there was never a staple of like, this is home, because you go back to our country, our lives were completely opposite.
Right.
So my family came from a lot and were involved in a lot. And both my grandfathers are noble figures in the history books of our country. So, you get raised with that type of stuff in your ear, and then you look outside, and you're like, well, why do I live like this? And, why am I hiding at the grocery store so my classmates don't see that my parents are paying with food stamps?
Right.
So you just never really felt at home. It was like very, very survival mode. So
yeah.
The Afghans were very, very tribal of like, we have to stick together. And I was like, I got to a point when I was like 14, 15 years old. Thank God to my football coaches in sports, where I actually felt like I belonged to something more than just this community. And the fact that I took that leap of faith and embraced my fear versus surrendering to it and hermiting to it.
Right.
I learned that, nah, man, this is home.
Right.
You know, and if this is going to be home, then I need to contribute something to this home.
Right, right.
So it was about that time where I started really honing in on the power of community and sport.
Yeah, you know, that's something that's important. I feel like that I miss is that sense of community. Like I trained with Henner for a little while, and I felt that little family unit. And then whenever you're part of something bigger than you, like martial arts or something, there's a sense of purpose that's really important. And when you don't have that, that's when you kind of can get lost. And even if it's something as simple as like even being on a basketball team, that family structure of just sort of being needed, part of a unit. When you don't have that, it's easy to get lost. And like right now in my life, I actually don't have anything that I'm doing. And normally when I do, I just feel a little more sense of purpose. So I can imagine how that would, coming from another country, they would give you some type of structure, right?
Well, then, you know, as I get older, like for the longest time, I always thought it was like it was an immigrant thing, it was a refugee thing. And the more and more I've been able to expose the more and more I've been able to be exposed to is because I exposed more of myself. For example, guys like myself from strong Pashtun families, you see my nose, you see my ears, you see my face, like I'm the fighter guy, I'm the athlete guy, I'm 220 pounds, I'm 6'1", like da-da-da, I'm not supposed to be vulnerable.
Right.
Well, when I started exposing a bit more vulnerability and trusting, right, that the fact that I put something out with an intention of building, right, a friend or a community or a teammate, what I started to realize was that is a lot of us in this world are a lot more philosophically aligned than we think we are. And because of the disease of fear, which I believe is preventing human maximization, we don't get that, right? We don't understand that, like, we don't need to necessarily be on a basketball team or a football team or any of this shit just to have a community. I think the whole world becomes your community as long as we show them it's safe, that you're talking to another human being that's going to embrace you for who and what you are.
Right.
And you know, as time went on with my coaching and my competition, and I ended up hurting my back, and then, you know, I moved to Afghanistan for, you know, about 4 years in 2004, and all these little cool things and opportunities I had, that's what I come to the conclusion of is like, dude, the world is at peace. We're just throwing a bunch of shit on it out of fear versus like embracing and exposing the truth of society and people.
Right.
Right? And that's kind of like when I started building out Empower in my facilities and my business and stuff I'm doing in the NFL and stuff I'm doing in Silicon Valley and Wall Street, etc. I'm coaching the exact same principles.
Right.
Which is truth.
So is that what makes you stand out apart from everybody else? I mean, obviously you're like you're a great guy. You know your shit, but is that what separates you from everyone else? I mean, I read your ESPN article, and it was just saying that your approach to how you are working with these people, like you said, you have a handful of guys from the NFL that you're helping, maybe that need a little bit more guidance, maybe a little bit of your understanding of life and those things that are more than just like, you know, run physically, do this. Sure. There's all sort of a therapeutic way that you work with your clients. Is that fair to say that you have a spiritual approach of sorts?
100%. Like, you know, they did this article not too long ago. Look, I was raised in practice faith of Islam. And a couple years ago, I did this interview, and at the end of the interview, I go, what is it you're doing? And I said, I'm just teaching Islam through physical activity. And what I mean by that is the entire initiative and intention behind what I do, which I know kind of separates from a lot of other folks in the industry when it comes to like the physical side of things and the coaching side of things, is the spiritual correlations to every physical activity that I always bring light on, right? Especially when it comes to like discomfort, right? A lot of folks when it comes to push through, tear your muscle. I'll stop. And as they're pushing through, I go, listen, what else is going on in your life that you feel like you can't push through? Because right now you said you was uncomfortable, right? Yeah. Well, look, you're still holding that position, aren't you? Well, why can't we do that with X, Y, and Z with that addiction issue? Why can't we do it with the thoughts of suicide, right? Why can't you break through and embrace?
So it's like a metaphor for...
Correct. All correlative activities.
You know David Goggins, that book, have you read it?
I haven't read it.
It sounds similar to his approach. Very, very disciplined, self-disciplined, uses all of his physical things as a metaphor for, and not being no fear, just completely being a mental warrior. That's something that I noticed for myself, that I was never so good at self-discipline. Like I'm so, like even for instance, if I'm going over to Kaj's gym where we worked out, if you just put on a board for me, all right, we're going to do 3 sets of 10 burpees, but just put it on the fucking wall. Because if I just walk into a gym by myself, I'm like, what am I going to do? I need that structure. And I'm sure a lot of people need that direction. So you provide that for your guys, NFL, MMA, you work with Luke, right? What other fighters do you work with?
Jake Shields has been my ride or die 15 years, you know.
Are you in his are you a corner man for him?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm the head coach of Jake.
Okay, got it. And he's and his gym is in San Francisco. Is it in the city?
Yeah, he's in San Francisco. Right now he's in New York just doing a whole bunch of grappling.
Is he still fighting in the UFC, or is he?
No, he hasn't been competing in MMA for the last year, taking a little time off to just grapple.
Right. Isn't he friends with Crone Gracie? I feel like Crone's gone there and trained.
Crone comes up and trains with Gilbert. Gilbert's place. Gilbert's another one of my teammates I came up with. Luke Stewart, I'm sure you remember from Strike Force. You know, all the Bay Area guys, Josh McDonald, all the AK family, you know, David Terrell up in Super NorCal. And that's a big, massive community that all kind of came up together. And we all united at Fairtex years ago.
What's that?
Fairtex was a big facility in a gym, big Muay Thai facility, but we all utilized that as our big MMA hub where we all first initially met.
Got it.
And that's kind of like where we all dispersed and kind of started taking different paths with the craft that we built, right?
Right.
Some of the homies still want to stay in competition. Some of us want to take that into mainstream and other sectors because I obviously believe there's a lot of room for utilizing the craft of combat sports and high performance physical activity in workplace performance, right? When it comes to like becoming the answer to strengthening the cultural thread within really high performing organizations.
Right.
It's not just fighters who take high risks. Think about hedge funds. Think about private equity firms. Think about technology tech entrepreneurs, right? Think about individuals battling emotional disease and addiction and suicide. Like we can't be when you got game that makes you be the best you, that can't be restricted just to athletes, right? And that's where my mission and intention has been about disrupt the norm, right? Bring this into all walks of life because every single human being in this world has an internal world title that they're chasing. They just need help to define it, and then they need, like you, to your point, structure and organization on how do I get there step by step. And I'm not by any means the best in the world, but I'm 100% the best for my community, for the individuals that are philosophically aligned, because they're also the best for me that make my game, trigger my game into disrupting and trying to simplify these complex approaches of self-development.
So do you think this has something to do, is that part of the Afghan culture as well compared to Americans? Is it, Americans I feel are a little more, you can't paint this whole country with one paintbrush, but like, I feel like other parts of the world have more spiritual elements and values. I feel like the West has sort of lost that. Maybe there's religion, but there's not a lot of that. Do you find that you get resistance from some of your athletes that you work with that aren't conditioned the way you are, maybe in that sense, and and that's what you get them to that point?
That's such a great question, and no one's ever asked me that in a shit ton of interviews that I've done. Yeah, and I think why I think that's so awesome is that just like anything in our lives, even the self-development is a behavioral practice, right? It's kind of like running a marathon. What would you do every day for 10 weeks if running a marathon?
You'd run.
Run, right? So when it comes down to being able to understand new behavioral changes, you have to practice those behavioral changes.
Right.
So way back in the day, when I first started, all right, look, outside of just competition, I'm going to start coaching a friend or two and people. I realized that people aren't philosophically aligned or could understand the depth of how I feel or how I talk sometimes. So what do I need to do? And that's when I started organizing this thing called game plans. Okay? Game plans is just a branded term for something called an honest conversation. And what I do with that initial time, anytime I meet with any of my new teammates, I always make sure that we do a game plan, which lowers the waterline. It just allows us to have a very, very honest conversation about true emotional capacity. So at least I know what I'm working with and where we need to go, and can I relate? Because if I can't relate, I'm not going to coach nobody as a hypocrite.
Right.
If I haven't gone through something similar that they've gone through, or I haven't experienced it or seen it or done it, I'm not going to be like, all right, man, here's what we're going to do.
Right.
It's more along the lines of like, okay, cool, we just have a really awesome conversation that just helps lower the waterline where we both feel what we all seek, which is being understood.
Right.
Right? So with that being said, the current state, obviously here in America, and versus coming from a background that has well over 5,000 years of history, it's not that America doesn't want to. It's a very, very new country to the world.
It's 300 years old.
Right?
And we're puritanical in that we don't have most places in the world you go have these rites of passage as
culture's been developed.
Right.
Over here, we're still developing it. Like, how much adversity have we been through as a nation?
Right.
Where we've had to,
come
together
it's brand new.
And become a bunch of nationalists as one. And it's unfortunate. It's always war. And it's always like, things like God bless everybody's soul, 9/11. Like, look at the camaraderie that brought America to after that attack.
Yeah.
You see? But the thing is right now, because we're not really going through that much, war inside the country.
Well, if anything, we're divided against each other,
like a motherfucker, right? And that's how we're dealing with our insecurities. Like, I'm better than you. No, I'm better than you. And
it's very immature. Just if it makes sense, it's actually immature. Like this country is immature. It's not that developed. The way we think. It's very. I see that. I see a lot of just confirmation bias where people just pick a side and they're just, like to quote Brian Callen, he's like, it's not even a race thing. I believe if everybody was just white, there would be tribal division. People find a way to want to not like your neighbor or whatever. And it seems like this country's going through that a lot.
And the thing is we have to. Like, we need to go through this type of stuff like every other nation in history did. And you're a very well-read man. Like, a lot of the world went through this, right? And it has to go through this in order to be able to define character. Think about all the goals and aspirations we have as a nation. Well, you don't think that shit's going to hurt to get to there? I mean, think about just like the other day when you came in and you were busting your ass working out in Kaj's gym. Like, what you want to get. Of course, that shit's going to hurt. Yeah. Right? So that's the same thing that we need to take in as a nation. And I think because we haven't been through so much, we've got generations and generations of, like, entitled mentalities of, like, we deserve this because the media show that America was X, Y, and Z. Right. It's like, well, no, unfortunately, America's just finally being exposed to Americans. Mm-hmm. Like, the rest of the world has been seeing it for years. Right. That's true. And then when you travel, that's why I always think traveling is so important, because when you travel overseas, you really see, oh, man, I'll travel wherever and you'll see other Americans in other countries, and I go, oh, now I see why people don't like us so much. Like, not only is it our politics, which isn't our fault. Like, I'm just a civilian. I've had these arguments with people or discussions where people are like, oh, fuck your president. I'm like, that's not me, dude. I'm just a civilian. Mm-hmm. But also the way Americans act is very entitled. And when you go around the world and see how we walk through life, it's a turnoff to me. Like, I don't know. I feel like there's not a lot of respect in our culture, possibly, or I think we need to get to the bottom line of just understanding that we don't have a culture. Yeah, right. If we had a culture, then this wouldn't even be a thing. Like, the thing is that we're all seeking culture so bad, we keep blaming everything on our cultures. Like, no, there hasn't been something that defines us yet. Right. Like, we don't have particular American codes yet. Right? Like, think of other countries, for example, like Afghanistan, right? You got, even like Kaj and I were eating, he's like, this is so Pashtunwali. And what's Pashtunwali? Right? Pashtunwali is the way you treat a guest. Even if it's your enemy and they're in your house, you can't kill them. You feed them. You pray with them. Right. You give them tea. You give them a gift. Yeah. You send them off. And then you fight them out on the street somewhere. But you don't do that to your enemies in your own home. Wow. Interesting. Right? Yeah, that's beautiful. And it's that type of culture is code. Right. And like, what types of codes do we have here? We'll get those. Right. If the house of cards doesn't fall first. Right. Yeah. Right. But we need that. Like, whatever's happening right now has to happen. Yeah. I agree. It's my people really in love with America, and it's getting a lot of people to step up. And I think the branding of, like, all these things that we're doing with, like, communities, and we just got to get to a state like other countries where everybody's just considered an American. Right. Not are you on this side or are you on that side of my, it's super chaos, but this shit has to happen in order for it to get cleaned up. Right. So you trained Luke Rockhold. You work. Who are some of the other maybe famous UFC fighters that you've worked with? Well, I've had the privilege of working with a ton throughout my time in the game. Like Court McGee, Ramsey Nijum, Luke Rockhold, Luke Stewart, Jake Shields, Gilbert Melendez. And do you actually train? Is it conditioning, or what exactly are you training? No, so my forte, obviously, in the game has always been my stand-up. Okay. Even though I got my black belt in jiu-jitsu, I've taken a lot of my game from my teammates. And look, in our generation, we were never really coached. Right. We learned a craft, and then we all learned to coach by coaching each other. Like, I was better at stand-up, I coached the whole team in stand-up. Right. Jake was better in jiu-jitsu, he coached the whole team in jiu-jitsu. Josh McDonald was better at wrestling. He coached everybody in wrestling.
Got it.
And our generation just ended up coaching each other and learning. That's how we learn to coach.
Right.
And then slowly, with everybody making some noise and everybody doing well, more folks were coming in from all over the world to move into the Bay to train with us. Mm-hmm. And then we slowly started coaching all these youngins in this next generation.
So I imagine you have a long line. I read this wrong, but it seems as if in that ESPN article that I read that everybody's trying to fuck with you, but you only have so much time in the day. That do you handpick your clients that you work with, or like a football team that wants to work? Let's say the Tennessee Titans wanted to hire you. You're staying in the Bay Area. Mm-hmm. You're not leaving.
Never.
That's where you want. That's home. So to let them come to you, if anything, right? So you're working with the Raiders right now. You're working with the Niners. You were saying.
So players from these teams. The reason I can't work for a team is because, as you know, my mind works a little differently. I can't have a glass ceiling over my head.
Right.
And what I learned from some time and some cups of tea I've had throughout the National Football League, that obviously there's a lot of ego, right? When something better than folks, they don't like that.
Right.
They don't like the attention being on you when they're the head coach and I'm okay with that, right? But I also don't want to limit my game and be restricted just to a National Football League team.
Right.
Right. So having athletes from different teams are a lot better for the impact and reach of my game. Having someone from the Seahawks, having someone from the Niners, having someone from the Raiders, someone from the Giants, and so on. And especially when they're the key players on these teams, right? And everyone's like, well, where are they going? It's like, oh, they're coming to the Bay. Right. And now I'm doing a whole bunch of, part-time between Santa Monica and San Francisco.
Yeah.
So we're going to build a whole other Empower down here and have the same exact operation I have in San Francisco, split in time.
Great.
Going back and forth. But
could be worse. LA, San Fran, it's a good little shuffle for you.
Well, it should be.
Two great places.
It should be.
Now, I feel like San Francisco Bay Area is always on the forefront of
game changers,
right? Even the Golden State Warriors, for instance, their mentality and what they built as an organization, and obviously being around like the tech industry and around a lot of the, even the former hippie. San Francisco always seems to be one step ahead, evolutionarily speaking, with a lot of ways of thinking. And even if it's something like the marijuana industry booms first out of Oakland or San Francisco. Right. What do you think it is about the Bay Area that's a little bit, that's got that little edge over some other places? Is it just because everyone moves west and it's like like-minded people?
It's a safe place to innovate.
Right.
People actually give people a chance. Right. People believe in ideas there. It's not
Steve Jobs type shit.
Right. I mean, even think about for example, Jed York.
Yeah.
The massive shift he's made. And all right, listen, I'm gonna change the culture of this organization, and he made some bold ass moves.
Yeah,
right. And look what he's put together now. I mean, right now the talk of the town is both with the Niners and the Raiders. That these are two. It's the first time in a long time that both Bay Area football teams could clinch a division.
Really, the Niners are supposed to be that good?
Well, the Niners are about to be raw. I'm telling you, man, Kyle Shanahan is something else.
Yeah,
I've had the privilege of spending some proper hangout time with him. But obviously seeing the leadership of Jed, and what he's always been capable of, but finally what he's exposing, and the group he's put around himself with Kyle, with obviously the legend Lynch, and the rest of his team out there, man, it's a different vibe in the Bay. And when I go down to the facility quite a bit, because we have an Empower at the 49ers too. And I go down there and I peep shop, man, things are so different than they were 4 years ago.
Right.
Energy-wise.
Right.
Vibe-wise. Right.
Yeah, it was dark there for a minute.
It really was. You go there now, it's kind of you remember in high school sports and high school football where you would chant family, family on three, 1, 2, 3, family, because everybody was a band of brothers.
Right. That's the culture.
Jed's been able to build that with Kyle and John and the National Football League with a bunch of grown-ass men.
Now... Yeah, because last year, the 49ers, there was some crazy stat that I read that, even though our record might not have looked that good, I think we lost by an average of 3 points or something crazy like that. Any of those games could have gone either way, and we could have been a 10-6 team instead of whatever we ended up being last year. That makes me excited because I've been a diehard Niners fan forever, and watching that epic collapse that we had a few years ago under Harbaugh, and watching everyone just that was like a biblical proportion collapse. Now the rebuild's great to see. And Oakland 2 years ago was a playoff team, and then they kind of fell off for a year. So both teams being good, that's exciting for the Bay Area, because especially now, well, I guess the Raiders are going to be going to Vegas next, but not this year. One more year?
One more year, yeah.
Right. So we need to get them one good year in the Bay.
Yeah.
God, that's going to be tough for Oakland, because I grew up, 5 minutes from the Coliseum. My whole life was going to Warriors games and sneaking into A's games, and That's going to be a trip now that the Warriors and the Raiders are gone, and the only team left in Oakland is the A's, and they're building them a new stadium. That's going to hurt Oakland for like. That's a blow, you know. That's a big part of our culture.
My brother, Marshawn Lynch, I mean, he was going to city council meetings about
trying to save it
wow. Because he understands, obviously, look what he's turned into and what he's done. Like, he's a massive figure in the world.
Yeah.
Like, I'm talking, like, I was in London and folks know beast mode. I was in Dubai, folks know beast mode. That's
he's
an Oakland kid.
Yeah.
And he knows what sports in the Bay and primarily in the East Bay mean. Mm-hmm. So, you know, it's unfortunate that these political and egoic issues are, you know, between ownership and city officials lead to something like this.
Yeah, it's not personal. You can't stop progress, and that's just business. And I get it. Oakland's a small 400,000 population city, and I get why Vegas. It makes sense, but it just sucks for anyone who's from there.
Right.
And watching the Warriors go over to San Francisco is going to be a trip too, because I've watched the team change over the years and become sort of these tech millionaires in the front row. And it used to be grimy as fuck. You know, only the true warrior like that.
But since you've been, have you been back to the Bay? Like, don't you kind of miss those days?
I do. And I don't know if it's just because I'm obvious. You could always look back and miss those days no matter what it is. But yes, I go there now and it's changed dramatically. And I almost miss the struggle of when the Warriors sucked. And this is actually kind of a good thing that we lost KD and the team's rebuilding because now we're the underdogs again. Right. It almost we were too good that it was hard to root for us. But my whole life has been watching my struggling Warriors. To see the last 5 years was the most incredible ride of my sports fanatic career. So Marshawn Lynch, did you ever see his Bear Grylls episode where he went?
Oh, yeah.
Dude, that made me. I already loved the guy enough, but when I saw him on that and he really kind of had those moments where he was. He almost was crying on the side of the mountain, and he showed his real sensitive personal side, and he was talking about rocking off instinct. I remember one of his quotes. They were like, he was so endearing and so likable that you don't get to see that too much because he doesn't like doing interviews. You always see him at the press conference, and he's just like stone cold gangster from Oakland. But when he did that episode with Bear Grylls and went out into nature, there was something that it showed his vulnerability. That's exactly what it is.
So he's been with me the longest.
Right.
So he's the one I've coached.
You've seen that side, I imagine.
Well, him and I connected on that front in 40 minutes of our first conversation almost 10 years ago.
Uh-huh.
You know, 8 years ago, something like that. And that was because the introduction was safe, because it came from Tom Cable.
Who's Tom Cable?
Tom Cable is probably the most legendary coach, has the strongest run game in the National Football League. He's the assistant head coach of the Raiders now, and the line coach there.
Okay.
He went to Seattle, a couple Super Bowls. He's the head coach of the Raiders first, went to Seattle, and then came back to the Raiders now. And he's the one that introduced me and Marshawn to one another and was like, hey, I said, what is it? And he's like, I got this young man, T, and if we can get him comfortable with himself, we'll probably have one of the best running backs you'll ever see in the league. And I said, well, what is it? He's like, talk to him, you'll see. And then Coach made this intro text, and then Marshawn hit me up. He's like, why the fuck Cabes want me to see you?
I love it.
I was all, he told me you were a dumbass. And he started laughing. He said, oh, okay, I get it. And this was on a Sunday. And then that next morning at 9 o'clock, he was in my office in the city, and we sat down for 40 minutes, and we just did a game plan. And we just talked about honest shit, real shit. And, at that time I had just gotten back from, 4.5 years or so in Afghanistan. And he's kind of like, why do you think like this? And why are you so crazy about wanting to push people to do that? And I kind of told him about my story from Afghanistan and my family story and all this stuff. And he kept pounding his chest. And I'm like, what's good? He's like, you understand me. He's like, that's what beast mode means, T. Beast mode means I'm trying to serve people and get the beast out of people.
Wow, yeah, that's beautiful.
And his whole entire mission in this world is about being the biggest performer in the world for people. And you know what his famous quote is, my favorite thing in the world? If I'm eating, everyone's eating. And legitimately, that's who he is, man. This ain't an act. He can give two shits about media. He can give two shits about social media, any of this type of stuff, documenting his service to people. I mean, he does, I'm telling you, man, for as much as you read and you see, multiply that times 100.
What he does for the community.
He does for people.
Yeah.
Not just the poor. I'm talking people.
Right.
I'm talking politicians. And I'm not talking money. I'm talking time and talking and believing and pushing people through things that they don't want to do because they're scared of being judged or scared of the media. And for him, it's like, fuck that. Let's go. You got us. What do you need? You got us. What do you need? And my whole stable has been, the majority of my stable, you know, when you ask, do I handpick them? I have a vetting process, and my vetting process has literally been Marshawn. You know how that works? They'll show up, like Spencer Ware, for example, gets his DUI kicked out of Seattle, and he's all worried about his career. I had no idea. I'm in my office. My front desk comes up with AT. Some cat's at the front desk, and I walk up, and this dude with luggage and like a chaw in his mouth, and he stares at me. He's like, Marshawn? I'm like, oh, come on. Marshawn, just send folks that are like us to me. You know what I mean? Same thing with Marcus Peters and Jalen Richard and Dion and everybody have all come through. Marshawn knows exactly how we operate and what we fuck with. Right. And those are the types of folks that are all philosophical.
So you become almost like a paternal figure, like either a big brother or a father to some of these guys that need some type of guidance, right? Is that fair to say that you become more than just a trainer, that you become no, I mean, the last thing on our agenda of discussion is what we're doing physically. Right. Like the more important thing is about just figuring out the bigger purpose and not worrying about being judged about having that purpose. Right. Because shit means something to these guys that the whole world be like, what? These guys, these fucking monsters care about this? It's like, yeah, man, they're fucking human beings too, man. Right? Well, I guess that persona gets associated with who they are because they're big, they're black, they're strong. Like, why should they care? Yeah, and with football too, it's not like basketball. Like they got a helmet on. It's not as personal. You just see a blob out on the field with like a bunch of pads on. It's not as personal. That's why when I saw this thing with Marshawn Lynch, it touched me because I was like, oh, I really am seeing the real him, not the guy post-interview at the game, not the guy in the... It's like you're really getting to see this. And another thing he did that was great, he went back to Oakland Tech, or what high school did he go to? Oakland Tech, and he was playing football with the high school kids, full contact. I was like, oh, if I was a coach, I'd be fucking get the fuck out. You're gonna hurt. What if you roll an ankle or something? But he don't give a fuck. He genuinely don't give a. There's something about Oakland that produces a certain type of spiritual gangster. Like there's some, obviously the Black Panther movement. There's a lot of history in Oakland, in the Bay Area. But there's something about like all my homies from the hood in Oakland that have something else that's not
culture.
Yeah, man.
Oakland's got culture.
Oh, a lot of culture. Yeah, that's exactly it. I feel like
the Bay Area as a whole has culture.
Oh, absolutely. But the difference between San Francisco to Oakland, it's a world apart, but yet it's somehow the same. I was talking to Too Short about it. I had on the pod, and I was explaining that I was from San Francisco, then moved to Oakland, and he's like, "Oh, worlds apart." Right. And it is, but yet it's also hard to explain unless you live there. Yeah, the Bay Area is
Bay pride,
right?
You know what I mean? Or particular words like the hyphy, in the movement. I mean, we just got things in the Bay that you just don't hear anywhere else.
Yeah, the slang, the culture. So there's a lot of culture. Hella, that's bled into the mainstream now. Yeah, hella's become a thing. Obviously, some of the. And there's been more like hip hop out of the Bay Area than like the city of Chicago. Chicago's got 10 times as many people, but there's only Kanye West and Common, and you can count the rappers on one hand out of Chicago. And then you go to like Oakland, a small city, and man, the list goes on and on. Burner. Do you know who Burner is? Yeah. I just had him on the pod yesterday.
Burner's been around.
He's been around. He's got the San Francisco hustle. He's like a very entrepreneurial, smart motherfucker who's built an empire. That guy, everything he touches turns to gold. But he's a perfect example of sort of the product of the Bay Area, and that there's something else happening up there that's different. And I could see why that would be the allure for certain athletes to maybe come, we want to go work with him in the Bay. Like there's some next level shit, right? It's like,
I hope.
Yeah, that's what it seems like.
You
So can we talk? Do you mind talking a little bit about when you said you went back to Afghanistan for 4.5 years, and I read something in the article where you had to face some situation where you had to combat somebody or face a situation of, was it a military? What was
it? So my family originally, as I alluded to earlier, came here from Afghanistan, and both my grandfathers played very, very noble roles in the history of that country. My maternal grandfather was the first commanding jet fighter and jet pilot in the history of the country, MiG-21s. My paternal grandfather was one of the most renowned spiritual leaders in the history of our country. Wow. And they both had very, very significant roles. And the only time Afghanistan had only peace and stability for 35 years in this entire history of this country.
Right.
And my grandfathers were the reason why.
Well, that's interesting. You're a product of the militant and the spirituality. It's like, you're right. That's exactly what you've become, a byproduct of both of those things.
Yeah, I've actually acknowledged that now,
Yeah.
at this age of 37.
Right, right.
But and that's the type of mentality my parents always kept in the house. When we always thought about slipping, or we ever thought about trying to not be, let the insecurities take over and be an asshole, my mom will whoop my ass and be like, why I'm whooping your ass? I'm like, no. She said, here's who your grandfathers were. Here's what they stood for. Don't think just because we live in this situation that royalty doesn't live in this house.
Right.
So it's always in our head that, look, like, our whole mission in this universe is do what our grandfathers did, which was serve.
Right.
So, I played football at Fresno State, and I really wanted to pursue the league since I was so close to it. I ended up having this back issue that kind of like gave me a sign of like, oh, don't do it. I had back surgery my senior year. But I was like, now it was all good. I was training again, no problem. But this big family situation came about. My father left America. And he went over to Afghanistan, and the situation was extremely fucked for him because it was over land disputes. And it ended up being his own family that were the people who were doing all this shady shit that, he was having a really hard time understanding, because it was a very, very, God bless his soul, he just recently passed, but it was very difficult for him to understand how someone could do that to him, especially people he loved so much. He was very non-confrontational, very quiet, easy to manipulate type guy.
Right.
I was the opposite. So I was extremely protective of him.
So you went and back.
I had to go stand up next to him because I knew he'd get walked all over if I didn't. So I made that decision of like, put your dreams aside, because I knew my dreams would end up coming to life in some form. It doesn't have to be about me just being in the National Football League. So I ended up packing up my bags and I went to Afghanistan for a very, very fucked up, violent situation.
Right.
And I've shared this before in the media. I was prepared to do stuff I would never imagine myself doing when it came to protecting myself from my father.
Right.
100%. And I was at the stage where I was like, okay, if I'm going to be shot, I'm going to shoot back. If I'm going to be stabbed, I'm going to stab back. If I'm going to be kidnapped, I'm going to kidnap first. Like, the whole mentality for 3 months of preparation was this.
Wow.
And I get to that country, man, I get off the airplane, and my father had no idea I was coming until 7 hours before I arrived. I called him from Dubai, and I told him, I'm here. And he was like, what the fuck number is this? And I was like, man, it's a Dubai number. I'm going to be in Kabul. He said, when? I said, 10 a.m. Long story short, I get into that country, and I get off the airplane, my man, and I'm not a very emotional dude, and as you'll learn. But I just broke coming off that airplane, man. I got so emotional. Like, I wasn't bawling, but tears were just coming out of my eye like Niagara Falls.
Right.
And my dad, he's at the bottom of the, of the airplane, because like back then the Kabul airport wasn't done yet. And he's standing there with like 4 or 5 very, very well-known, notorious commanders of different regions of the country to greet me, because they were the ones that were with my father taking care of him while I wasn't there. And he's like, son, everything's going to be okay. You're safe. We've got a lot of... I said, Dad, it's not about being safe. He said, what is it? I said, I'm disgusted with myself. He said, why? I said, dude, we've been blessed with an education, with running water, with electricity, with 911, with the community, with like all this shit my entire life. Basic etiquette, morals, spirituality. And I said, could you believe like your son, the general's grandson, was coming into this country to add more blood and savagery to this already fucked nation, given all the things I could do?
Right.
And my dad like gave me a fat ass kiss on my head, and he said, you'll figure it out. Like, you'll figure it out. And I swear to God, within 10 minutes from the Kabul airport to our house, which is on a street called Chicken Street, your parents will know all about it, by the way, from that generation. It was a massive, massive tourist attraction for free spirits back then. That's where our house is. Between that and that, I figured out my entire purpose in this world.
Wow.
And I said this, I said, what do you have to offer? What do you have to offer? What do you have to offer? And I made a decision. What I live today is my entire mission in this world has been about reconciling peace through the power of sport and physical activity, whether it be internally or community. And right there, I get there, and I'm like, man, everybody here's expecting me to be barking dog, be crazy as fuck, like da-da-da. And I just channeled all that energy into these little kids that were greeting me outside of my house right when I got there with a soccer ball. And they came up like, oh, hey, it's Pachaseb's son. He's a football player, and threw me a soccer ball. And I kicked the ball hella high in the air. And I'm like, not soccer, motherfucker, American football. And they all laughed. I was like, no, I'm just kidding. I play soccer too.
Right.
So this little soccer program ended up taking off, and started the neighborhood program. And then and then like more and more kids would be playing. And then I'd see like these feuds between 2 different blocks. And I was like, man, let's get these kids to play together. Why aren't they playing together? Oh, you can't go over there. You know what I mean? You're going to get... They're in fights and stabbings and this and that. These are like 13-year-old kids, 9 to 13 or whatever. And I ended up just getting these kids to compete with one another. and really started to like laugh with one another and joke with one another. And then like we'd have these little neighborhood tournaments, and at the end of every week on Fridays, which is like the weekend there, the winning team has to take the losing team to ice cream.
Wow.
To show humility after conquering.
Right.
You feel me?
Yeah, yeah.
And I just saw these kids were like sponges. And the cool thing was that with this program, these kids were so protective of me and so protective of this program. At all cost, they'd come and give me all types of intelligence. Like, hey, coach, like this shit's going on in our house, and here's what the adults were talking about. Blah, blah, blah. I'm like, oh, damn, like this could become a massive tool to legitimately reconcile peace.
Right.
And as time went on, I built a ton of relationships, and I was supposed to be there for about a month and a half. And I ended up staying for almost 4.5 years.
Wow.
And a lot of people ask, how'd you do that? Why'd you do that? I said, it was the first time in my life where I actually felt valuable.
Right.
So I just felt addicted to feeling valuable.
Yeah, yeah.
My words meant something to people.
Right.
And the soccer program turned into this thing, and like, it turned into this whole national thing. And then a women's program started from this thing. And then, this crew came up and, exposed a story in the creation of the Afghan Women's Soccer Federation that this guy, Wali Sabrzadeh, started that I was helping with. And the ESPYs ended up giving the girls the Arthur Ashe Award. So we got the Arthur Ashe Award in 2006 at the ESPYs. And I got to attend and be there for that whole thing. But I was like, man, fuck this. This is like a publicity stunt because ain't nothing happening other than just bringing exposure to this thing.
Right.
So all these nonprofits started taking all this hype off these little girls' programs for shit for themselves, and that really turned me off. And I said, I need to do something a lot stronger than this to legitimately bring attention to Afghanistan. And what was frustrating me is like, I have friends like you, I got friends like Callan, I got friends like Kaj who spent a lot of time in Afghanistan. It's very difficult to attract thinkers to Afghanistan because of what the media portrays about what's going on out there, right? You only see the shitty side.
Yep.
But for as much bad as you see, Simon, there's that much good going on.
Yeah.
And I'm like, how do I expose this without raising $1 billion and convincing CNN or Fox or Al Jazeera to make me a feature every week? Because they wouldn't. So I said, I need to disrupt media, and I need to do it in a way where no one would ever understand the power of what I'm doing. So that's where I made the decision to create the Afghan Women's Boxing Federation. And the reason I wanted to create that boxing federation was because the biggest issues I was hearing when I tried to attract my friends to come over was, oh, no, man, women are oppressed, the Taliban are psycho, da-da-da. And I'm like, guys, it's completely opposite, actually. The media is making these guys a lot worse than they are. There's a couple of assholes in that regime, but the intention of the leaders of this regime is a lot different than what the media is putting out. And women actually do want to step up. They're not oppressed. We'll prove it. And that's why I made the announcement that I wanted to create the Afghan Women's Boxing Federation, because I wanted to incorporate the most male-dominated activity known to mankind in the most male-dominated society of all time, and be the first of any Islamic republic in history to bring such a program of women's dominance and such a male-dominated activity to life.
Man, this is crazy.
So when I built that program, I had to MacGyver it. So some of the girls from the soccer teams that I knew, I'd always shadow box and be like during water breaks. You know, Coach, what are you doing? Do you box her? I'm like, I am. And I slowly told me, hey, listen, I might do this thing, but here's why I'm doing it. Like, this is going to be a movement, because I want women to be able to come to the boxing program, not because I'm trying to make any fighters, right? I'm not trying to make boxers. I'm not trying to make UFC fighters. I wanted to create this program and have these girls step up and show, listen, if I box, I should be in the Ministry of Defense. If I box, I should be in Parliament. If I box, I should be an entrepreneur. It's almost like a validation of like, I should be involved in male-dominated roles. So I want that program to be that almost like vetting screening program. And when I wanted to do this, the big pushback I was getting was, hey man, you need to take your American ways and get the fuck out of here. And you know who that was from? It wasn't even from the locals. It was from all the expats. It was from all the people that were there for peacekeeping, or the ones that were telling me to take my idea out of there.
Was that ego? They were threatened by you? Were they threatened?
I think they didn't like the fact that I was about to dissolve a massive fund for women's empowerment without raising any money to do so. Right? There's like $150 million per organization towards women empowerment. I'm like, man, it's not money that's going to change this country. It's people's time.
Right.
It's going to be leadership, right? And these types of people were the ones that were like, I would talk to them not because I needed to raise money. I would talk to them because like they're specialists and experts in this thing. Like, what do you think of it? Oh, you should not do that here. Oh, why? You know, we've got these funds that's going to lead these conferences here and these conferences there. I'm like, well, fuck that. None of that's a behavioral practice for these folks. They go for a 3-day conference and you expect women to be empowered? We need to do something that lives in the DNA of this nation forever. We need to install something into a National Olympic Committee, that people can strive for generations and generations and generations and be praised because they go to the Olympics, they utilize this from boxing clubs, they create tournaments, they're involved in things. That's a long play. And I said, well, who would stop me? Oh, these warlords would kill you, and the Taliban would skin you and your mother. And my mom, who you'll meet, is a savage, right? And the things she's done in that country was insane. And even my mom was like, listen, son, I've raised you as an individual to embrace fear and tackle everything and anything. And I always remind you who your grandfathers were, but this shit you're doing, cut it out.
Wow.
Even my mom.
Wow.
So I said, well, who? And again, I went and got this long list of folks that could be potential opposition to me. And the first two warlords were extremely supportive. One of them was Malik Zarin, who's one of the most powerful warlords in the history of our country, especially after the Soviet occupation. Literally kissed my forehead and told me I was going to be the angel that saves the country.
Jesus Christ.
Right? And then Commander Buddy Coat, who's a big commander on the border of Afghanistan and Pakistan, his two daughters became my first two boxers. After doing something a lot of us don't do, you know what that's called?
What?
Communicate.
Right.
And then was the Taliban. So Mohammed Mutawakil, who was the chief spokesperson and foreign minister of the Taliban regime, had just gotten back from Guantanamo. And he's on house arrest, but obviously they still have lines of communication. He was on house arrest about 25 minutes outside of Kabul in an area called Khushalmina. I have the interview right here.
Holy shit.
And I got the opportunity to meet with him. And I went through a whole bunch of different channels of friends I made. And I said, listen, I want to talk to him about this program. He said, why? I said, I need it for my own confidence. Because if this is the guy that's supposed to skin me and my mom, I want him to know that I'll skin him first.
Holy shit, dude.
And I was nervous as all hell. And I went and met with him with the attitude internally that, like I'm not going to lift my skirt to someone claim they can do something. I can't do something to them first. You know what I mean? But I want to show them my passion. I want to show them my family history. I want to show them why it's important to me. I'm a young dude. I don't have to be there. I could be in America at the beach, at the clubs,
right.
Bottle service to all the homies. All my friends are professional. I can live the life.
Right.
But it meant a lot to these guys that someone young like me was out there. To them, it was always he's sacrificing his life in America. No, to me, this is a responsibility I owe to the world.
Wow.
And I also wanted to show Afghanistan what America does for its refugees. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So I went and had this long-ass conversation with him, man. I was super nervous about it at the get-go, but after about 45 minutes of talking, the guy put his hand on top of my hand and he said, listen, this is the most symbolic initiative anyone's ever presented to our regime.
Jesus Christ.
And
dude.
he said, I'll tell you this much. I'll be the front line of security to protect this program. And if anybody from our regime gets in the way of this program, I'll wear lipstick and high heels and run around the national stadium.
Wow.
Because I shared with him the efficacy that sport and physical activity can have to the peace and prosperity of our women. And he said, I'm 100% aligned with you. I said, well, let me ask you another question. Why did you guys oppress women in the first place with these burqas? I said, my grandma was the wife of the general, right? Look at their pictures from the 60s and 70s. My grandma's wearing cut-off sleeves, updo from France. My grandfather's in his suits. They played tennis, played volleyball. Look, they're all wearing shorts. I was like, what was this? And he started laughing. He grabbed his beard. He goes, young brother, what do you think the mentality of a nation is who's gone through 30 years, 3 generations of savagery, where all they know is to kill and rape and steal? You think they know how to treat a woman if they saw a nice-looking, beautiful woman walking up and down the street? Because for 3 generations, the only time they saw women were when they were used for sexual abuse. So he said, if we didn't cover them, what do you think would happen to them if they're walking to get some food?
That's so interesting. I never even...
He said, we wanted to just take time to educate the young men of this nation about Islam. Because what's the most important thing in Islam? And I just stared at him. He's like, the protection of our women, the protection of our mothers, the women who had you in their womb for 9 months. Right? And he said, well, look at this perspective the world puts on us. The media doesn't give us an opportunity to talk about these types of things.
Right.
And that's, that was right there where I was like, holy fuck. Like, here's the power of showing vulnerability, of having an intention, speaking about truth. Now, why should I just limit this to Afghanistan? And after 4.5 years is when I came back to the States.
You applied that to your
applied
practice?
it to the league.
Wow.
I applied it to individuals suffering from drug
Dude, this needs to be a fucking movie, man. Has anyone done? Is this going to be told like more than just like on a podcast? Or I mean, this is fucking the most incredible story. Like this is beautiful.
Yeah,
it's absolute, and Americans need to know this. But you know what I'm saying? This is something that's like profound and beautiful and inspiring and educational, eye opening. This is the incredible story. Like,
I look forward to coming back on here with you soon. And I got a book deal.
Oh, cool. Okay, good. Then, I was gonna say this needs to be like known.
And I'm really excited about. And I also there's a show being shopped right now.
Okay, good.
Called The Disruptor.
I was gonna say like you being in LA and being around people. Like I'm sure it was just a matter of time. But this is. Man, I just had no idea. This is an incredible story, man. And how brave you are. It's almost like you are a politician, and I mean that not in a bad way at all. But you have a charisma about you, and you seem to be like a good very personable, and you seem to a lot of eye contact, very honest, sincere. Like you have qualities that I could imagine going into those situations. You know, it's not like you're in there bullshitting. It's transparent. You can see who you really are, you know? So I imagine you going into those fucking situations and just being yourself. I mean, not most people could do that. You know, if you went in there talking about operating out of fear, if you went in there like at all scared or like, I don't know if they would have connected with you. It's just you have a very open vibration.
Because I'm telling you, man, I got the answer to world peace.
Wow.
Believe me, I do.
Wow.
It's simple. You know what it's called?
What?
Confidence. That's it. And the thing is confidence isn't something you and I instill in people, right? You know what confidence is? Something that we expose in people. So if we could just give people a chance to believe, we give people a chance to love, we give people a chance to forgive, we give people a chance to be grateful, we give people a chance to embrace, what are we doing? We're giving people freedom. Mm-hmm. And if people have freedom, then they're confident. And if they're confident, all they want to do is share. Tell me one confident individual you know who's a piece of shit.
Yeah, because there's a difference between confident and cocky, you know. That's ego, yeah.
An individual is an individual who's aware of himself. And I've come across a lot of very beautiful people who are aware of themselves. You know what they do? They serve.
Mm-hmm.
And think about the names you just dropped a few minutes ago.
Who did I drop?
Callan, Kaj.
Right.
You.
Yeah.
Henner.
Right.
Burner.
Oh, yeah.
Marshawn.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, you're right. They all have
all
that.
These people, the way your face got when you talked about these people, you lit up, your chest opened
you're
up.
Right, you're right.
These are all confident people. And what do confident people do? Serve.
Right.
Give. Right? So imagine if we normalized mental health, which is the mission, and we allowed people to be and feel how they want to feel. All people want to get to at the end of the day is to be able to serve, right? And this is why I think we restrict people by telling them how they need to be, what they need to be, join a team, be this or you're that. And it's like, man, even the worst people in the world, like the Taliban, for example, look at them. They're the ones who gave your boy the confidence, exposed the confidence and the freedom and the safety to go act on my dream. They could have easily been like, yeah, have fun walking out of this door without your head on a spoke. But they didn't. Why? Because I embraced their mission as well. And I just helped them change the narrative on how they articulate that.
Right.
And that's what I do with all my athletes.
Right.
People are like, oh, you got all the problem childs. No, motherfucker. They're just not understood because you choose to not understand them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to help them reorganize the way they present what means something to them.
Well, there's not a lot of people out there like you, and that's why this is so interesting, because I don't think that a lot of these athletes probably grew up with the wrong role models and the wrong, ideologies, and they need somebody like you to just point them the right direction.
Well, they needed that in order to value someone like me.
Right.
So like I tell them, you can't be mad at the past.
Right.
Because if it wasn't for that,
it wouldn't be with you now. You wouldn't.
Dion, for example, right? He went through all this addiction with alcohol and drugs, number 3 overall draft pick in 2013. Stephen Ross, the Miami Dolphins, loved him. Fucked that whole entire thing up. Got suspended from the league twice. Got back in, showed his thing, and then, he's got ADHD. And he's been taking Adderall his whole life. And he took Adderall again when it was like his little TUE was expired. And now he got suspended again for 10 games for Adderall. You know what I mean?
That's crazy. And they're pumping him full of so many other things anyway. It's like all the opiates and shit in that league. And
So then he's sitting there like, oh, mad, this and that, blah, blah. And I'm like, listen, look how much more aware you've become about yourself. Look how much more you know about yourself. Look how much more you love yourself. And because you love yourself, look how much more you're giving to people you love. None of this would have happened if you haven't gone through this shit.
Right.
So now he's not mad at that shit anymore. He's like, laughs about it and he's grateful for it. You see? And I think these are the types of narratives that we need to give people the freedom to have. Yeah,
you're a spiritual leader by way of physical training and by way of sports, which is that's interesting because there's not too many people. You know, you had your Phil Jackson, right? Okay, he was a coach who practiced some spiritual elements to his coaching of Kobe Bryant and all these people, meditation and whatever it may be. You know, he gave these people that never were exposed to these certain ways of life, and look how well it worked. You know, they're champions, and I'm sure it gave them the confidence. This is man, if there was more people like you, imagine how the world would change because we need more people like you. You know what I mean?
Well, there's no accident. We're all connecting at this stage of our lives.
Yeah, and I'm happy to just share like this story. Just even listening to it's touching, and I hope all the people listening this inspires them too. And because you're right, it's about communication, it's about confidence, it's about compassion, it's about being unselfish. Like there's, my buddy Chris Ryan, he's a doctor and one of my mentors, a great guy, and I was depressed a while ago, and I refused to take like pharmaceutical pills for depression. I'd rather just deal with it and go through whatever I got to go through. And he goes, next time you feel that way, go give to the less fortunate and see what happens. So I go down to Whole Foods and I buy a couple chickens and I go to fucking like the Skid Row area of Venice and I give out some food. And then just that little moment of giving out some food to a few homeless people and the look on their face, how they lit up, and it cost me $7 and what it did for them. I was like, holy shit, man, if that's a microcosm of what it's about, And I feel like for me, my service is, I know this hasn't been necessarily a funny podcast, but I do comedy stuff. And when I put out a comedy song, Dirt Nasty music, or if I put out a comedy movie like Scary Movie or an Instagram video and I get people to smile, that gives me purpose.
Right.
So that's my healing and that's my way of making the world a better place. Even if I could just put a smile on someone's face for a few minutes, that makes me feel some sense of purpose. I feel like what you're doing here, man, is just that times 1,000. Like this is such a...
Because you know what you just said, everything you just mentioned to me about what makes you feel that way, it's an outcome.
Right.
What I want to do with you is go one layer deeper, and what can we do for you to feel like that about you doing for you?
Right.
I think it's important, Simon, for you and us and all of us to hold each other accountable to being selfish.
Yeah.
Why? Because I know your intentions. You know my intentions. The best version of me is going to be a better version for the world. But if we consistently make the best version of us what we're doing for people only, then what happens when one person gives you a middle finger and says, go fuck yourself? It shatters everything. Because what we've done is that we've put our entire piece in the hands of other people that have their finger on the trigger of that. Versus us taking full control of that and believing in our intention on why I need to do me first. Right? So,
and it's not selfish. I think people get confused by that.
It is selfish.
But it's okay. But I think the word has a stigma to it. Right.
This is where language is so important.
Well, because it all starts with you. And if you can keep all you can do is keep your side of the street clean and walk that shit and if you can keep your shit tight, then the rest of the world will be affected by that. It's like, it starts with you. It's like an old saying.
Believe me, man, and I'm a little younger, but from my little time, my experience, I don't have one piece of shit in my life. At all.
What do you mean, piece of shit? Like a person?
Yeah. I don't have one person who I'm like, what a piece of shit.
Right.
Because of my intention, everybody that's in my life is in my life for a better me.
Got it.
I may not agree with the way they do things, but I got to find a way to agree with it. Because it's for something. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So this is like when it comes down to the selfishness thing, like even about that, I get so fucking selfish. Like this is all happening for me. Right, like I've been burnt like you wouldn't believe. I'm a small businessman. Like it's a small business.
Right.
Like, I've been burnt so bad. By some of the very capable people. But instead of being like, fuck this guy, it's like, no, actually, it's my fault because I made him be something he wasn't in my head.
Yeah, you took accountability for yourself. You know, and to go backwards a little bit, somebody actually just said that to me recently. This chick comes up to me and she's sort of this like hippie healer, new age kind of woo-woo girl. And then, you know, I'm half in the door, half out the door with a lot of that. You know, my dad's like a new age healer and I've been around it my whole life. And just like in anything, there's 90% of shit out there's bullshit and 10% is truth in so many businesses and things. Right. And this girl comes up to me and she just looks at me and she just called me out. And she's like, you know what? She didn't even know me. She goes, you need to stop making everybody else happy and just make yourself happy. And I was like, whoa. She just called me on my shit because that's exactly what you just said. I'm out there trying to make everyone else, you know, but it starts with me. She goes, stop. She goes, be selfish. It's okay. Do you know, and everything else will. And she just like walked away. I was like, how the fuck is this bitch? You know, she called me on my shit and she's absolutely right. And it was like this, whoa, it was just one of those moments. It's exactly what you're talking about.
Your entire adult life has been about serving.
Serving
a persona or serving
and that's exactly what it is. It's a persona.
Like, well, you got to remember, man, like that shit's just for a particular hour of the day or 2 hours of the day.
Well, and specifically with me, people get it twisted because they see this character that I portray called Dirt Nasty, which on stage is this scumbag, drug addict, fucking piece of shit. But people can't separate that sometimes, so they think that's really me. And I always say, look, 5% of Simon is Dirt Nasty. That's where it comes from. I have those thoughts, but that's not really me. I'm actually like a pretty humbled, like nice, mellow dude. And like it's not what you think. That's just an act. But that persona becomes you, and it's the mask that you wear, and that could fuck you up. Some people, like, you know, for instance, like Tupac, right? He played a gangster in a movie. Before that, he was a backup dancer for Digital Underground. Right. He played a gangster in a movie called Juice, and then took on that persona, and look what happened. Right. So people sometimes can't handle that shit, and that's what I've been dealing with lately. I'm in my mid-40s, and I'm just dealing with, like, you know, I can't turn down these paychecks. I go on the road. I get to put smiles on faces. I get to be Dirt Nasty, but I don't feel it's not in my heart anymore like it used to be. Like I don't like getting on. There was kids at my show in New York the other day, and I'm up there. I'm on cocaine. I'm like, I don't want to say this in front of this child anymore. Right. This is, and I have to, and I apologize to the girl after. I'm like, you know, this is all a joke. She's like, oh, her and mom are like, oh, we get it. It's all fun, but like. I have a conscience about these things now. You know what I mean? And
that intention alone should give you the freedom of feeling your cheddar.
My what?
The intention.
Yeah.
Alone. Like the intention, like I'm not trying to inspire this. I'm not trying to push any of this shit on people. This is all an act. People know that. Right. So you got to give yourself that freedom of being like, man, trust your intentions. Right. Right. And there's obviously a massive gap in trust somewhere in there.
Oh, yeah.
That I'm going to dig into soon.
Yeah.
One day.
Oh, yeah. And, I have trust issues.
Yeah. And that's the type of thing. Like if we have those issues elsewhere, it's because you have it on ourselves. So I remember everything that we have that we, because of this, it's because of that. It's that person. No, man. It's you first.
Yeah. You know, my dad, hang on, let me grab this. My dad wrote a book, right? And my dad wrote a book. This is my dad's book, and I just read it, okay? It's called You're Never Upset for the Reasons You Think, and it's all about, it's a technique that him and his wife wrote about resolving triggers that happen that you don't realize are programmed from when you're a child. So, for instance, you get in a fight with your girlfriend, and she doesn't call you back for 2 hours. You're not mad at her for not calling you back. You don't realize that upset is from your childhood abandonment issues. All these little triggers and things that are in our subconscious that we don't know about, right? That's like what you're talking about, the trust, all those things. Like, I don't think people realize how much stuff is childhood shit that's blocked down in our 95% of the brain is subconscious behavior and patterns that we repeat and things we don't even realize that we're doing. And I'm sure you deal with that with some of your clients.
No, I deal with it myself, man.
We all do.
I'm the most insecure person you'll ever meet in your life.
Well, it doesn't show.
This is why I do what I do.
Right.
I don't coach because I'm just trying to help. I coach because I need to feel valuable, like I said at the very beginning.
Did you feel insecure because as an immigrant coming to San Francisco, was it a cultural thing and coming to America in San Francisco? There's not a huge Afghan community in San Francisco.
Well, look, I spent the majority of the first part of my life in an insane asylum.
Oh, really?
And in psych wards. You know, I had two parents that obviously coming here as a situation as we did, like you have to be diagnosed under some mental illness or some sort of disability in order to get government support.
Oh, shit. Okay.
And on top of that, the war trauma and my father's instabilities were kind of what led to that. And a majority, if it wasn't for football and sports, my summer breaks were always inside of psych wards and insane asylums.
Wow.
And this is something very, very young that I saw that fucked me up because I'm always like, dude, how am I going to be perceived? Am I going to be a cuckoo? Am I going to be perceived as crazy? And then be at fucking, grocery stores at Food for Less. And my dad would stare at me and go, hey, I'm about to pay with funny money, food stamps. like you want to go outside before some of your classmates that you might see in here see you with this.
Right.
So it's like a lot of these things about fear of being judged
Yeah.
made me so fucking insecure so young.
Right.
But I saw what insecurity did to people in my family. I saw what insecure, like fighting it, right? And fighting fear did to people in my family and in my community and my cousins, and how they were dealing with it was the, and I was like, man, I'm not going to deal with it that way. I'm not going to become bipolar and schizophrenic. And I'm all of these things, 100%. Right. But how I'm dealing with it is by being selfish and creating a business that prevents me from being a hypocrite. So me not being a hypocrite means I need to do everything I'm coaching more. Right. So I just had this conversation this morning with Dion and his sister Sherelle. And she's like, why are you so passionate about what you do? I said, because if I don't, I'm scared I'd die.
Wow.
Unhappy.
Right.
And, and this is where I'm like, man, believe me, man, like vulnerability is fucking freedom.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
asking people to hold you accountable to a deficiency, it ain't really a deficiency. You're asking them to hold you accountable to a strength. Because how many people got the balls to tell you what I just told you?
Yeah.
A grown ass man.
Right.
Hey, I'm super insecure. I have forgiveness issues.
Yeah, me too. No shit.
And I call it an issue because it's something I haven't done. But when I do it, I'm like, oh man, I feel like I could walk through walls.
And I feel like in our society too, it's like everything's bullshit. Like someone would call on the phone, hey, how you doing today? Oh, I'm doing great, when you're having a horrible day. Like everyone's putting on this facade that everything's okay when it's not. Like I walked into the store the other day and I was having a bad day, and the guy at Ross was like, hey, how you welcome, how you doing today? And I said, I'm not having a great day. And he just was so taken aback because I was honest, and everyone's usually just says, oh, great, thanks. And everyone's just living this kind of,
and you're crazy for that.
I was, and he just was so taken aback, but I was just being honest. And then it kind of just changed the whole vibe. And another thing you just said about when a girl, like for instance, a girl is insecure, or when a girl is secure, when a woman is secure in herself, it is one of the most attractive qualities in a woman.
Amen.
If a woman is comfortable in her skin and relaxed, and is not just like, that's an attractive, that turns people on and engages them than someone being needy and insecure. So I think even on a visceral level on an energetic level, when somebody's relaxed and confident and not insecure, it makes everyone else relaxed, and you know what I mean? It has an effect.
It does.
And people project and all these things, and like I know there's been times where
I'm telling you that confidence is the answer to world peace.
Yeah, dude. I believe it. That makes a lot of sense. And I guess
going.
I guess the question is that how does somebody get to that place? Is it through experience?
Community.
Is it through people like you helping them get?
I'm telling you,
man, and that's what we're missing a lot, man.
But we're not, right?
A lot of people are in isolation, dude.
But people choose to be.
Right.
Like you asked me about Alden Smith earlier, right?
Yeah.
Like, I've been working with him forever, and I had the privilege of helping him get back into the league, and then he fucked that whole thing up again. But to us, right? To the outside, oh, he fucked it up. It's not a fuck up. That's what he chose to do. Right? That's his thing. Because he has the decision. He has the ability to make decisions. I've seen him get dressed. I've seen him buy things. So I know he's capable of making decisions. Right?
But as an addict, don't you think there's like a willpower bar? There's a finite amount of willpower that every addict has. At some point, you could do really good, but there's gonna be a point. I mean, nobody's perfect.
100%. And this is why I think it's so important that this community that we have, like with Empower, right? And that's what I'm trying to bring down here, is that we have to make sure that people know there is a safe place to have hiccups, right? And to quote unquote fuck up, right? And because there's going to be a team that they're waiting for you to fuck up, or have a hiccup. And I don't call any of that a fuck up or a hiccup to their face. I call it a hiccup. It's a bump to just make you realize, oh shit, like I'm aware. It's a space to be able to practice. I'm aware that this isn't something I should be doing. But the only issue is with the Aldens and a couple of our others, and including myself, is that we haven't normalized mental health yet. You said something earlier, like I walked into Ross and I told homie, like, oh, I'm not good today. I'm not having a good day. I'm having a shitty day. Right? Why isn't that normal?
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Like, why can't, like, you and I have no problem. Like yesterday I saw you, right? Oh, I'm gonna bang out some pull-ups before I go to Hollywood.
Right.
Well, what if you're like, hey, T man, I'm gonna go meditate on my depression for a few minutes.
Right.
And why can't that be the same thing? And me pat you on the back while I'm coming with you.
Right.
Right? And these are the types of shits that a community could normalize, and people feel safe doing it, they'll do it.
You know, a community too is so important. Like I'm an only child. I spend so much time alone that I've said this before. It almost scares me how okay I am alone and how used to alone that I'm being. And I want to have a family and I want to have a wife and children. And I've gotten so used to being alone as an only child, and I travel and I live out of a bag by myself. And I'm just sort of now a product of my life up to this point of being alone, and I miss community. And even if I just go play basketball with the guys here in Venice, or if I go, even when I saw you yesterday at the gym, 8 people working out together as part of there was something happening that I felt a part of something that I'm missing, and I feel like that leads to a lot of depression, 100%. A lot of mental illness. People are isolated, people are sad and lonely. That's why they use drugs. And I think I read that in like 50 years ago, 5% of the population lived alone in America, and now like 40% or some alarming number of people live alone. I'm not supposed to be living alone in this box. We're social monkeys. You go back far enough, we're monkeys that need to socialize and need each other. And
this box should just be
the
for
worst
sleep.
thing you could do to a prisoner is put him in the tank by himself. That's when you go fucking nuts. And I'll find myself having these things, and it's like I'm used to being alone, but I'll just be sitting here and like idle hands are the devil's workshop. Like that's where shit gets weird, is when you're just kind of sitting around and I don't got nothing to do. So I do meditate. I go to yoga. I work out. I'll go take a walk on the beach and leave my phone. I do these things, but it's the isolation I feel that is, a lot of people are alone, man. Yeah. A lot of people are alone. And even if it's just like
it's easier that way. That's why.
Yeah, man.
Right? People haven't practiced embracing discomfort enough.
Right.
Having
in that
conversations. Right. Being challenged. Being asked questions that make you think. Right. Like right now, you can't agree to disagree. Right. If you don't agree with someone, fuck you. You're on that side. It's like, no, man, I just don't agree with you. But it's okay to disagree. Right. So this is what makes people be like, all right, fuck this. I don't want to talk to people. Why? Because the conversations aren't easy. Right?
Yeah,
but this will all change, man. Like you're here, I'm here, or Brian's here, Dion's here, Marshawn's. I mean, the whole entire universe of individuals with a mission to normalize peace and to mental health. We're all slowly uniting at a very, very important time in this world. So we're making some noise.
Dude, let's end there, because that was honestly amazing. And I would love to spend more time and kind of watch you do your thing. And if you ever, like you invited me yesterday to the workout on the beach, but I had to go. I want to be a part of the community, and I would love to just see what you guys do and just be a part, because this feels like something really bigger than me, and bigger than there's something that I want to share and spread the word on what you're doing, because I think it's fucking beautiful, man. I really do. You're the best. Thank you so much for your time, brother. I appreciate you, bro. All right. Hey, wait, so real quick, because people find you, like, if I don't know if you care about this.
You can get me on Instagram.
Okay, what's the Instagram?
At Tareq.
Okay.
Tareq.
Okay.
And that's it. And then everything else I do is on there, and whoever I support, what I support is on there. And anything I could do for anybody, man, hit me up on a DM. I'll check them once a week and scroll through as many as I can.
All right.
Always happy to help, and I love everyone.
Yeah, I love you too. Thank you, brother.